Hi guys, just a quick one now. I think quite a good video would be just something I've noticed recently. And when I say recently, I probably mean within the last couple of years, certainly. Or maybe it's something I've always been aware of, and I've been able to elucidate it with a couple more specific examples in the last year. And that is that desperation turns anybody off, and then it doesn't just seem to turn people off, it turns the world off from you. Now, I remember when I was younger, and I'm talking about 15 years ago now, probably, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and between 10 and 15, I do specifically remember some of the people that I would speak to in like my English class or something when I was young, and I remember one of the girls, like, if she wanted to tell a story about the fact that she had like an older boyfriend, and I think this is, she had lost her virginity to this older boyfriend, and I remember I'll always like employ this now, but basically she sat down next to me and she sort of went, "I may or may not be a virgin anymore," and I went, "Oh, right, okay," and just basically played it cool and went totally normal. And then, because I wanted to know more, so I made it seem as if like this is totally normal, and her sort of natural desire to want to delve a little bit further in and say a little bit more sort of came in. Well, that's a very odd example to give you guys, but it's an extreme story, and I think that an extreme example like that sticks. If you want a better example, something more current, the fact that I'm a car salesman, nothing switches people off like desperation. If you are desperate to sell a car, people are thinking, I don't know about this. And I would ask you guys that if you think about the times that you have been looking at a car and the salesman sat across from you seems desperate to get rid of it, they seem desperate to sell something, or or if you've been out looking for a car, you send a couple of messages out on a couple of cars you like, and then you have the half conversation, and then even if you forget about it, occasionally there's like a guy who keeps coming back in. Look, are you still looking? Are you still looking? And you're like, fucking, I'm not, right? And then when people text you back endlessly, are you still looking? Is there something that you still might? What about this? What about that? That kind of does put people off. I think desperation, and desperation for money really makes it hard to get money. Desperation for girls, I would say, is a big one. So again, going back to when I was younger, the moment that, and funnily enough, my wife has now told me the same story, but the moment that I kind of said, I don't really care if I get a girlfriend, that for me was the point where I actually, I started doing things myself, rather than being a bit of a creep and trying to always be on girls' good sides and like, and be in their circles. Starting to do things for myself is when I started to become quite attractive to girls. Now, in a slightly different vein, I use the example of my wife there. She's told me that just before her and I met, she had been, looking for a boyfriend, and then it kind of got to a point where she said, well, I'm gonna just stop tying up all my happiness on that one thing and just focus on myself, focus on other things in a non-selfish way, in like a self-building way, and that's when we met. Actually, it wasn't too long after that. The universe does not award desperation, doesn't reward desperation, sorry. It doesn't reward desperation, and actually, if you make one thing you're like, by the way, being desperate is very different to having goals. I would say that desperation is maybe that you have a particular goal, but you are trying to bend reality to make that one single thing happen. And I think that's why you get so much resistance, is because bending reality, well, it's going to resist. So, yeah, I think that the path of least resistance, sometimes, again, not to make it sound as if you should be lazy and not have goals, but if you don't act desperate, things can come quite nicely, and without a huge amount of tears. Another example that I'll give you is, again, just coming back to my current job as a car salesman. There was a point, and I think I've maybe said this in another video, where I was very, very upset that basically I was having to do a shitload of work to keep up with one guy there who was very naturally chatty and quite a talented salesman, just, I would say, naturally. And the amount of work that I had to do to beat him by 1 or 2 cars a month, it just felt like I was basically putting in double the hours. I probably was. Like, I don't think it was a, oh, it feels like it thing. I think I really was actually sat at my desk twice as much. And there was a point where I kind of hit myself on the head, and I just said, you know, look, what's selling? You know, is desperation selling? Is being visibly offended when people say, no, we're not going to buy, selling? Or is taking it easy, being relaxed when people come in and not pushing too hard, is that working? The latter was working for this guy. The former was what I was doing, and that, well, like I say, I was on maybe a car or 2 more than him per month, but again, there was a lot of fucking resistance to bend reality to my will in that one. I suppose another good example is something that I will always, remind people of who are potentially interested in a bit of trading or something like that, and that is that day trading is a really quite good way to lose money. It's virtually gambling, whereas putting money in and holding on for the long term works really well. In my own life, just putting money into Bitcoin and then just letting it sit rewarded me quite nicely, and I will actually say rather quickly as well, although that wasn't the intention. When I tried to make it as a day trader and I was desperate to keep doubling it, that's when it all left. So consider that for yourselves, that day traders, you know, they're not beating the market, they're not making money regularly, and I'd say, from what I understand, the vast majority of day traders are not winning, and they're usually not beating inflation. Whereas if you just stick your money in an ETF and kind of forget about it, yeah, fine, you feel like a fucking boomer. You know, I'm 25 and I'm putting money away from my pension. Hey, look, the boomers are fucking rich, right? Just take it that way. Just invest for the long term. Invest in things that you're going to be handing down to your children, and even grandchildren. You know, end of this year, start of 2027. When we have this stock market crash, that's going to be quite interesting, and I think that might be a good time to buy an awful lot of something like OpenAI. That is almost definitely going to get absolutely battered. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they have by far and away as well, not even by a little bit, they have by far the highest amount of cumulative losses before they've turned a profit so far, which is pretty staggering when this stuff is meant to be the future, AI. But yeah, there's apparently some quite good research going into research into AI companies, of which obviously OpenAI is one, that they are around about the same sort of values to actual intrinsic values that they had before the dot-com bubble, and quite a lot of those companies have recovered to where they were when they were at their peak. So my main thing, guys, is that if you right now are really desperately trying to win a girl, any girl, you'll take any of them at this point, don't do that anymore. I would focus on yourself, focus on how you want to look, focus on the life that you want to live, the money that you want to have, and the things you want to have. Again, not in a consumerist way, in a constructive way, but the right person will come along, and you know, that will happen. Like, God kind of takes care of you in that way. Similarly, job-wise, when you're desperate for a job, they don't come. When you just start going, well, what interests me, they come along. What else? Being chilled out with your investments, letting them take their time rather than, you know, swapping things around, trying to trade like that. Yeah, just leave it out, guys. Just don't be desperate. Desperation turns off people, it turns off the universe, it's low vibration. That's probably the best way to describe it. Brings your vibes lower. Thanks for watching this one, guys. I hope it's something you found interesting. Take care.